There's a quote from the latest Stanford University AI Index that really stuck with me. It says, "This year's index reveals a widening gap between what AI can do and how prepared we are to manage it." And those words really capture an unsettling reality. Because here we are in 2026, watching these technological capabilities just absolutely skyrocket, while our human capacity to actually govern those systems is desperately struggling to keep up. Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking the multi-front global AI conflict. Because this isn't just about code or data centers anymore, it's really a massive structural realignment of power, science, and society. We're going to explore these widening governance gaps, the intense corporate arms race that's fueling the whole thing, the high-stakes scientific frontier, and finally, the geopolitical scramble for artificial general intelligence, that point where machines can perform any intellectual task that a human can.
All right, let's dive right into our first major battleground, the widening governance gap.
So, the 2026 Stanford AI Index captures this really profound disconnect. On one hand, you have the AI experts, the architects actually building these systems. They remain highly optimistic about AI's impact on society. But when you flip the coin and look at the American public, they're feeling something entirely different. They're nervous. Their views on the societal impact are drastically different from the experts, and that nervousness regarding AI products is actively increasing. It's this fundamental tension between the folks building the future and the folks who actually have to live in it.
And that tension exists for a very good reason. When we look at the most comprehensive, data-driven analysis of AI's trajectory, the trends are just undeniable. Technical capabilities are improving at breakneck speed. Investment is accelerating. AI adoption is spreading rapidly across the entire global economy. But the real alarm bells start ringing with those last 2 points. Data transparency in this field is actively declining. Meanwhile, the very frameworks we desperately need to govern, evaluate, and understand this technology are falling behind. So the bottom line is we're essentially accelerating into a fog.
Now that acceleration isn't happening in a vacuum. It's being driven by massive commercial ecosystems, which brings us to the corporate AI arms race.
Let's map out the battlefield for a second, because the sheer scale of the corporate weapons and infrastructure available right now is mind-blowing. We've got Google DeepMind deploying massive models like Gemini Omni and Genie 3, and they're powered by agentic platforms like Antigravity 2.0. So we're talking about systems that don't just answer your questions, they actively execute complex tasks on their own. Then you have Microsoft, embedding Copilot directly into the lifeblood of enterprise with Microsoft 365, all backed by the massive compute power of the Azure cloud. And of course, there's Nvidia, providing the foundational hardware, but also pushing into entirely new territory with their AI factories. These really aren't just companies anymore, they're the foundational infrastructure providers for the 21st century.
And actually, focusing specifically on Nvidia for a moment is fascinating, because they are strategically moving way beyond just making chips. They've expanded heavily into physical AI, which means embedding intelligence into robotics, digital twins, and the actual physical spaces we inhabit. But what's really wild is their push for sovereign AI. Instead of relying on a global cloud, they're providing the infrastructure for individual nations to build, control, and secure their own domestic artificial intelligence networks. It's a massive shift in how global computing power is distributed.
And if you want to understand the overwhelming velocity of this innovation, just look at the rapid-fire release cadence from Google DeepMind alone. It's literally staggering. We're talking about Gemini Omni and Audio, right alongside Genie 3, creating entire interactive worlds. We've got SEMA 2 acting as a complex reasoning agent, AlphaFold mapping out protein structures, WeatherNext doing hyperfast forecasting, throw in VO generating cinematic video, and Gemma 4 pushing open models to the limit. Look, 10 years ago, any single one of these breakthroughs would have been the discovery of the decade. Today, it's just a routine rollout in May of 2026.
But we have to remember, this isn't just about flashy corporate product releases. We are entering a brand new scientific frontier. And as with any frontier, it is a sharp, double-edged sword.
On the one hand, the upside is brilliant, even life-saving. Think about how these AI models are directly impacting major real-world events. For instance, you have systems like Alpha Earth mapping our planet in unprecedented detail. And that translates directly to critical applications, like when WeatherNext actually utilized that data to help the National Hurricane Center better predict Hurricane Melissa's historic landfall in Jamaica. Then you have systems like Alpha Evolve, a Gemini-powered coding agent designing and scaling advanced algorithms across computing fields. These models literally stack on top of one another to unlock a totally new era of discovery.
We also see this incredibly clearly in medicine. The Stanford Index highlights a really sharp increase in AI adoption across the medical field. It's being heavily utilized to drive efficiency in clinical documentation, it's pushing major advancements in medical imaging, and it's heavily enhancing diagnostic reasoning. In a lot of ways, we are essentially creating AI co-clinicians that work side by side with human doctors.
But here comes that double-edged sword. The Stanford Index provides a very stark warning regarding this medical adoption. They note that growth may improve efficiency, but it also expands the attack surface for public health if misdeployed. In other words, by hooking these somewhat opaque models into our public health infrastructure, we're creating massive new digital vulnerabilities. And a misdeployment here isn't just a software glitch, it is a vulnerability on a societal level that could affect millions.
Which leads us directly into the climax of this technological war, the geopolitical AI divide. Because this technology is so unbelievably powerful, the scramble for dominance is now playing out on the global stage.
It's fascinating when you look at the data impartially to really understand the global board. The Stanford AI Index details a profound divergence between the two leading AI superpowers. We've seen that American public sentiment remains quite hesitant and nervous regarding AI adoption. But on the flip side, Chinese public sentiment shows a profoundly higher level of excitement for the adoption of these technologies. And this divergence in public readiness is a massive variable. It's precisely this domestic enthusiasm that's fueling China's aggressive, state-backed push to achieve artificial general intelligence ahead of the West.
And because of this geopolitical scramble, we're seeing corporations acting almost like nation-states. They're actually forming their own geopolitical alliances. Just look at Google DeepMind's national partnerships for AI. They are actively signing strategic partnerships with the Republic of Korea and strengthening Singapore's AI future. These companies are engaging in direct diplomacy to secure access, data, and global influence. The traditional map of global superpowers is literally being redrawn by tech executives, not just politicians.
So, where does this all lead? We've got nervous publics, racing corporations, and fractured geopolitics. That brings us to our final and most important question. Who controls the future? To answer that, we really have to look at the ultimate trajectory of these systems. The Stanford AI Index, specifically through insights from its executive director, Russell Walt, points to the advent of world models. Now, these are advanced AI systems designed to simulate and predict what might happen in real-world environments. We aren't just talking about chatbots anymore. We're talking about machines that can simulate reality itself, predict outcomes, and then act upon them. And this leaves us with a critical, foundational question. As these world models gain the ability to predict our reality, everything from the weather to our health to our physical spaces, and as data transparency actively declines, who ultimately controls the future? Is it the nervous public, the highly optimistic experts, the competing nation-states, or is it the massive corporations building the infrastructure? There are absolutely no easy answers here, but understanding the board is the very first step to making sure we aren't just players in someone else's simulation. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you next time.